I have this friend. Let's call him Mark. For 6 months, Mark was obsessed with a vintage Porsche. He'd show me photos of the leather stitching, talk about the engine roar, and he would practically vibrate with excitement every time he mentioned it. To him, that car wasn't just a vehicle. It was like the finish line. He'd say, "Once I have this, I'm set. I won't need anything else." His face had this giddy, almost manic glow whenever he tracked its shipment. Then he finally got it. I went to see him 2 weeks later, expecting him to be out on the road. Instead, the car was sitting in the driveway, already gathering this thin layer of dust. Mark wasn't even looking at it. He was hunched over his phone, eyes glazed, scrolling through real estate listings for beachfront condos in Mexico. The dream car had become just a pile of metal the moment the keys hit his palm. It's a bizarre and almost cruel glitch in the human design. We think we're chasing satisfaction, but we're actually being piloted by a single ancient chemical that doesn't care about the car, the condo, or even the person you just fell madly in love with. This chemical makes a promise it literally cannot keep. The promise that more will finally be enough. What's even stranger is that this same internal engine is what makes a raven smarter than a chimp, and it's why your passionate romance has a built-in expiration date of about 12 months. It's a molecule that treats Mick Jagger and George Costanza like the exact same person. We like to think we're in the driver's seat, but most of the time we're just passengers to a conductor that's obsessed with a future that doesn't exist yet. To understand why we're never satisfied, we have to look at the molecule of more and how it's currently determining the fate of the human race. Okay, so let's unpack this. We are diving deep into this neurochemical, dopamine, the force behind everything we pursue, plan, and crave. Our mission today is to really understand this fundamental opposition, this conflict between the desire for future rewards, that's our dopamine talking, and satisfaction in the present moment, which is governed by a completely different set of chemicals.
Right.
And this conflict, which is, essentially built right into our biology, is determining everything from our ability to keep a healthy relationship to our vulnerability to all these modern psychological traps.
What's so fascinating here is that the central confusion most people have about dopamine is mistaking wanting for liking.
Ah, yes.
And that distinction is really the core of this entire deep dive. Dopamine is not about pleasure in the moment. It's the motivational engine that drives the relentless pursuit of future rewards.
The chase.
The chase, exactly.
Yeah.
We have this powerful set of sources that detail this biological drive, how it literally created civilization by forcing us to seek better ways of life, and how that ancient wiring is now just colliding head-on with the hyper-stimulatory reality of the modern world.
I think we have to start there. We have to define dopamine's core identity. It is not the happy chemical.
Not at all.
It is, as we've said, the molecule of more. It's linked to this relentless drive for novelty, for exploration, for the goal that you haven't secured yet. If you are sitting still and feeling perfectly content, dopamine is quiet.
It's completely silent. It only activates when it sees a gap between your current reality and some imagined better future.
So it's a chemical of what if.
Precisely. The way our neurobiology is structured, dopamine allows us to see what we can call the realm of up. It's what separates us from organisms that just react to their immediate needs. It pushes us beyond the here and now, eating, sleeping, staying warm.
The basics.
And it compels us to imagine and strategize and work toward maximizing future resources. If one of our ancestors found a reliable source of water, dopamine wouldn't just let them settle there. It would immediately spark the thought, what if there's a better source, a more abundant source, over that next hill?
So it's the ultimate evolutionary tool for ensuring survival through resource maximization. It's the drive that says we have to plan for the winter. Can you walk us through some of those crucial examples of this future focus?
Of course. Think about the student example. They are faced with a very clear choice between immediate pleasure, going out with friends, sleeping, just relaxing, and a future reward, a good grade.
Right.
The student who gives up that immediate pleasure to stay up all night studying is operating purely in that dopaminergic space. The current sacrifice is judged as being worth the theoretical future payoff.
The dopamine pathway is basically doing a calculation and saying that the delayed reward is exponentially more valuable than the immediate comfort.
And it's the exact same mechanism that drives the entrepreneur.
Who sacrifices financial stability, a huge amount of personal time, maybe for years, on just the prospect of massive future success. They're prioritizing a completely theoretical outcome far above their current reality. It's a purely speculative chemical system.
And this leads us right to what we can call the dopamine paradox, which is really the most crucial insight here. Dopamine is the force that drives the pursuit of pleasure.
But it can't deliver it.
It's fundamentally unequipped to deliver the pleasure itself. The whole system is built around anticipation.
And that's where my friend Mark and his Porsche come right back in. The high he felt, that giddy, almost manic low, was pure anticipatory dopamine. He was constantly checking tracking numbers, imagining the roar of the engine.
Exactly. Neurologically, dopamine levels spike dramatically during that anticipation phase, right before you acquire the thing. But the moment the goal shifts from the abstract future to the tangible present,
The keys hitting Mark's palm.
the dopamine circuits responsible for that anticipation just shut down. It's a chemical promise that by its very nature cannot be kept because the chemical itself is designed to look forward, not to look around.
And that drop, that's the neurological crash that leads to buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
That feeling of, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Or in more serious cases, that chronic dissatisfaction that so many successful people describe. They achieve every single goal they set, only to feel empty the day after.
And we have to be really clear here. The actual pleasure, the liking of the experience, is handled by completely different chemicals.
Right.
Mostly the opioid and endocannabinoid systems. These are the systems that deliver physical enjoyment, that warmth, that contentment. Dopamine gets us to the finish line, but the here and now chemicals are what allow us to actually appreciate the view. If you can't make that handoff, you are just permanently trapped on a treadmill of pursuit.
And what's really interesting is that this desire system isn't just one big monolithic drive, right? It's broken down into two distinct circuits that sometimes work together brilliantly, while other times they actively work against our own well-being.
That's correct. We have what's called the desire pathway, the mesolimbic tract.
Yeah.
This is the older, more primal part of the system. It's the accelerator. It drives immediate impulse, craving, the raw urge to want. It's fast, it's powerful, it's relentless. And because it evolved so deep within the brain, it can easily override slower, more sophisticated reasoning. An overly strong desire pathway is associated with constant novelty seeking and, as we'll get into, a real vulnerability to addiction.
So if that's the raw, impulsive CEO in your brain screaming, I want that new condo now, where's the check and balance? Where does this sophistication come in?
That would be the control pathway. This is located mostly in the frontal lobe, specifically the neocortex, the evolutionarily newest part of the brain. This system uses logic and reasoning, what we call executive control, to figure out how to achieve the goals the desire pathway sets.
So it's the planner.
It's the planner, and the physical separation is really important here. The frontal lobe processes complex long-term strategy, it applies the brake, and it designs the route.
It sounds like the control pathway is supposed to be the rational, sophisticated planner, the executive assistant to that impulsive CEO. But is it still fundamentally flawed? If it's still serving the goal of just getting more, isn't it just a smarter way to be dissatisfied?
That is the tragic nuance. When the control pathway is extremely strong, which we often see in these high-achieving individuals, the type A workaholics, it doesn't necessarily contradict the desire pathway, it just optimizes its demands. The desire pathway screams, achieve success, and the control pathway responds, understood. I will design a meticulous 5-year plan to acquire the necessary resources.
So the problem isn't that the planner stops the goal. The planner just becomes hyper-efficient at achieving a goal that is inevitably going to leave the person feeling empty.
Exactly. These people are brilliant at planning and execution. They can afford the beachfront house, but they are chemically incapable of enjoying it. Their control pathway becomes so obsessed with optimizing, with strategizing, with working toward the next milestone that they constantly feel compelled to work. They can't just sit down and soak up the sun.
Their neural circuits are just constantly firing, searching for efficiency and future potential, even when the present provides everything they supposedly worked for.
That's the tragic irony of achievement driven purely by dopamine. You successfully create a future life, but you're chemically prevented from ever truly living in it because your brain is already projecting to the next future life.
And that capacity, the ability to actually savor the moment, that relies on the other half of the brain's operating system, the here and now chemicals.
This is where the balance has to be restored. The here and now chemicals are the present-oriented neurotransmitters. They govern appreciation, comfort, physical pleasure, social bonding.
So what are they specifically?
Well, the composition includes oxytocin, which everyone knows is the cuddle chemical, serotonin, which promotes feelings of well-being and security, endorphins, which give you that natural pain relief and bliss, and endocannabinoids, which govern satisfaction and a quiet sense of physical comfort.
These are the molecules that let you pause, They're what make you appreciate the texture of a meal, or the warmth of the sun on your skin, or just the feeling of being with a trusted friend. They let us savor the joys of the present moment and appreciate what we currently have.
And we absolutely need both systems. The desire system is necessary to initiate change and set ambitious goals. I mean, it pushed humanity out of caves and built skyscrapers.
Right.
But the here and now system is necessary to actually anchor us to reality and enjoy the future that the desire system creates. If you can't make that chemical shift from anticipation dopamine to consumption, the here and now chemicals, you are permanently trapped in a state of seeking.
It's amazing that this chemical, which governs our relentless pursuit of bigger houses and better jobs, is also deeply wired into the fundamental mechanism of intelligence itself. Let's shift gears and look at the sheer power of dopamine outside of just human ambition.
This takes us into some really interesting comparative evolutionary analysis. When we look at complex cognition, we find high dopaminergic activity in some incredibly surprising places. It suggests that dopamine is a primary driver for the convergent evolution of intelligence.
Meaning different species arriving at intelligence through different paths, but using the same chemical tool.
Exactly. The ability to focus, plan, and solve complex problems across vastly different species.
And the most counterintuitive evidence for this comes from, of all places, the raven's brain. When people think high intelligence, they think primates, maybe elephants and dolphins.
Right.
But the evidence suggests that certain corvids, ravens, crows, these other black birds, have incredibly dense dopaminergic pathways. This suggests a very advanced motivational structure that's geared toward future rewards.
And that high activity translates directly into stunning cognitive abilities. I mean, the structure of their brains is profoundly different from ours, yet their function is startlingly similar.
How similar?
Well, if you compare corvids to primates using scored metrics for complex cognitive skills like planning and problem solving, corvids consistently score an 8 out of 10. Primates score a 9 out of 10.
Wow. So they are functionally equivalent in many aspects of executive control.
They really are.
So we're talking about birds that, in terms of sheer intellectual horsepower and the ability to strategize, are nearly on par with a chimp, despite having a brain the size of a walnut. What specific sophisticated behaviors have researchers observed that link back to this dopamine-fueled function?
It's their capacity for planning for future needs. We see it so vividly in their food caching behavior. They don't just hide food, they use innovative foraging techniques and demonstrate really complex problem solving.
Like what?
Researchers have documented instances where ravens and crows will engage in multi-step tool creation to get food rewards, showing advanced foresight. They are literally planning for a non-immediate future.
The food caching examples are just fascinating because they show a clear calculation of delayed return. They'll hide food in multiple caches, and if they know they're being watched by a rival.
They'll sometimes feign caching in one spot to deceive the observer, then go hide the real cache later.
That's incredible. That requires a theory of mind and a willingness to spend energy now for a future secure payoff. That is pure dopaminergic planning.
Absolutely. This complex cognition, inhibitory control, working memory, strategic planning, it's all heavily reliant on dopamine. But here's the trade-off, which is vital to understanding intelligence in general. Specialization creates rigidity.
You can't maximize everything at once. What does that trade-off look like in the corvid brain?
We see a very clear inhibitory control versus memory trade-off. Certain food caching bird species, like the Clark's nutcracker, they evolve superior spatial memory skills because their entire survival hinges on remembering thousands of tiny cache locations over huge distances.
Okay.
This deep specialization is dopamine-driven. However, these same species often perform worse on cognitive tasks that require flexibility.
Meaning they get stuck in the old way of thinking.
Exactly. If you teach them a rule, say the blue dish gives you a reward, and then you suddenly change the rule to the red dish gives you a reward, what's called a reversal task. The specialized caching species have far more difficulty inhibiting the previously rewarded response. They keep going back to the blue dish. Their highly evolved memory circuit is so strong that it actually interferes with cognitive flexibility.
So the very pathways we feed get stronger, often at the expense of other abilities. The drive for future resources creates this incredible focused intelligence, but it can come at the cost of being stuck in a rut. Now, let's take that exact neurochemistry. The pursuit of the next big thing, the anticipation, the subsequent crash. and apply it to human relationships.
This is where the neurobiological trade-off becomes highly personal. The dynamic of passionate love is a perfect showcase of this mandatory transition from a dopamine-fueled state to a present-oriented one.
Right. When you meet a new person and you fall hard, that rush of excitement, the loss of sleep, the obsessive thinking, that feeling of unbounded optimism, that this person is going to be the answer to everything, that is pure, unadulterated dopamine.
You are in that moment seeing the object of your affection as a singular, future-maximizing resource.
And studies confirm this phase, what we call passionate love, is chemically and psychologically unsustainable. That high dopamine rush typically lasts, about 9 to 12 months?
That's the window. It's a phase of fantasy and projection focused on the potential of the relationship, not the reality of the person.
So if a relationship is going to survive past that initial novelty, the neurochemistry has to undergo this profound transition. The dopamine has to fade, and it has to give way to the here and now chemicals.
That transition is what shifts the relationship into companionate love. And this is supported primarily by oxytocin, the bonding chemical, and the other satisfaction chemicals like serotonin.
Right.
Oxytocin promotes deep comfort, stability, trust, a quiet sense of safety. It's about being content with the shared moment rather than craving the next novelty or the next milestone.
But the cruel trap here is that many individuals who are sort of addicted to that feeling of pursuit and anticipation, they confuse the fading of that initial dopamine rush with the end of love itself.
Yes, they're chasing the neurochemical high, not the person. They treat their partner like your friend Mark treated his Porsche. They acquire the prize, the dopamine drops, and they immediately start scanning the horizon for the next exciting pursuit.
And there's a story in the sources that illustrates this perfectly. The story of an architect named Elena.
A perfect, painful illustration of this trade-off. In her professional life, her relentless dopamine drive made her a star. She was always on the cutting edge, chasing the next design innovation, always focused on winning the next massive contract. But this same drive was a total curse in her personal life.
So when she met someone new, the thrill of the chase, the anticipation of building a life that was intoxicating for her, a true neurochemical high. She was deeply in love with the future version of the relationship.
The potential, the excitement. But when that relationship inevitably matured, when the couple settled into that steady, reliable rhythm supported by oxytocin, that comfort-based, here and now phase, Elena felt an agonizing sense of cold boredom.
And she would leave.
She would leave stable, loving partners because she mistook the neurobiological fading of the rush for the end of true emotion. The very chemical engine that pushed her to build a career empire cinematically dismantled her capacity for quiet, sustained happiness.
So maintaining a stable, long-term relationship requires a conscious neurological choice, a choice to value comfort and familiarity over novelty and anticipation.
It does. And the sources go so far as to draw this provocative analogy. From a neurochemical perspective, the highly ambitious, endlessly rotating love life of someone like Mick Jagger.
Right.
And the perpetually dissatisfied, grasping romantic life of a character like George Costanza are fueled by the exact same mechanism.
They're just trapped in the same high dopamine pursuit phase.
Yeah.
The only difference is the social outcome. Jagger's pursuits are generally successful, Costanza's are generally failures, but that internal state of chronic dissatisfaction, of never being able to savor the present connection.
It's identical. Their brains are forever optimized for the pursuit, unable to make that handoff to the satisfaction chemicals.
And that brings us to the biggest picture problem here. The fact that this internal chemical conflict is hitting us head on with the 21st century environment our ancient brains were never designed to handle. This is the core concept of the evolutionary mismatch.
The core theory is simple, but kind of terrifying. Traits that were highly advantageous in the environment in which they evolved. A hunter-gatherer existence defined by scarcity. Those traits become maladaptive in the rapidly changed modern environment. Our genetic and neurochemical evolution happens at a glacial pace, while our technological and social environment changes at lightning speed.
So our brain is still wired for scarcity. It's screaming at us to maximize every possible resource. But we live in a world of hyperstimulatory surplus, where high-reward chemical proxies are available everywhere, instantly. The pathways designed to find a rare piece of fruit are now being slammed by constant digital rewards.
It's a devastating conflict. Our dopaminergic pathways, designed to maximize rare resources in a harsh world, are now easily and artificially exploited by highly refined modern stimuli. Every notification, every high-sugar food item, every clickbait headline is designed to generate a small, immediate dopamine hit.
Constantly sending these false signals that there is an essential life-saving resource just one action away.
Exactly.
So let's break down how this mismatch shows up in modern health and behavior, starting with the most profound exploitation of the desire system: addiction.
Addiction is the ultimate manifestation of the dopaminergic mismatch. Whether we're talking about opioids, cocaine, or highly potent strains of cannabis, these drugs trigger a dopamine release in the desire circuit that is an order of magnitude greater than any natural reward.
They're like a guided missile.
A guided missile straight to the wanting system, bypassing all the slow, rational controls. The natural response to finding food or having sex gives you a dopamine spike. The drug hits the system and gives you a dopamine explosion.
Right.
And the sources really emphasize that the essence of addiction isn't just physical dependence, it is centered on craving. That powerful, relentless pursuit is dopamine overriding logic. The brain, having been exposed to this massive artificial hit, shifts its reward set point. It's a process called allostasis. It now rates the drug as the highest possible payoff.
So the motivation system is telling the addict that logically the drug is the smart decision, even though their conscious brain knows the drug is destroying their life.
The brain perceives it as a resource that must be acquired immediately, even at the expense of fundamental survival activities, like providing for your children or keeping a job. That is the terrifying power of the mismatch. The ancient wiring for survival gets hijacked to pursue a chemical that guarantees ruin.
And the same principle of evolutionary mismatch applies so powerfully to our eating habits, leading to the crisis in obesity and metabolic health.
This links back to the thrifty gene hypothesis. Ancestrally, humans experienced these feast or famine cycles and were involved in high levels of physical activity. Natural selection favored humans with the thrifty gene, those who could efficiently store any consumed calories as fat for the inevitable lean times.
So, a high-calorie fatty food source would have triggered a big dopamine response, encouraging you to maximize it.
Absolutely, but the environment changed. Today, we live in the age of convenience foods, which are unnaturally high in calories, refined sugar, and fat, and we lead largely sedentary lives.
So the brain's ancient programming to maximize resource storage meets a modern reality of perpetual high-calorie surplus.
And the artificial potency of modern food, designed to hit that sugar-fat-salt sweet spot, delivers a dopamine reward far beyond what any natural food source could. This mismatch promotes overeating and leads directly to conditions like obesity, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes. The biological drive that once saved us is now threatening our collective health.
And we experience a profound psychological mismatch when dealing with anxiety. The sources trace modern chronic worry back to ancient survival software running in the wrong kind of environment.
Right. Ancestrally, we lived in an immediate return environment. If you felt anxious, it was because there was an immediate solvable problem, a predator, a lost shelter. You ran, you fought, or you found the cave, and the anxiety resolved quickly. It was a useful, short-term problem solver.
But modern life is defined by a delayed reaction environment. We aren't running from immediate threats. We're dealing with threats to our future well-being. The looming work deadline, the mortgage payment due in 3 weeks, the complicated professional rivalry.
And anxiety, still operating on that ancient survival software, it misfires. It applies an immediate high-alert fight-or-flight response to problems that require long-term planning, patience, and bureaucratic processes.
So you get chronic, debilitating worry and generalized anxiety disorder, rather than a productive, immediate action. It's this constant sense of existential threat without any immediate action that can resolve it.
Exactly.
And finally, we have the pervasive mismatch in the modern workplace, which actively exploits these dopaminergic mechanisms to guarantee we're never fully satisfied, which leads to burnout. This brings us to the story of Kenji, the software engineer.
Kenji lives in the pinnacle of industrialized comfort in Tokyo. His apartment is warm, he has high-speed internet, his life is objectively stable. And yet he's perpetually exhausted and empty. His brain is still wired to find joy in rare, significant discoveries and a massive payoff after a long hunt.
Instead, he's trapped in a hyper-stimulatory environment of perpetual digital pings. His social media gives him endless small hits of engagement. His work sends constant emails that promise future resolution. His games offer instant leveling up rewards.
His brain is constantly seeking a hit that never truly satisfies the underlying craving. The modern workplace, large, hierarchical, full of measurable metrics, bosses, deadlines, is designed to exploit these evolved psychological mechanisms. It demands constant, low-level performance for a future reward.
A promotion, a bonus.
It is always kept just out of reach.
So Kenji experiences this profound sense of exhaustion and emptiness because his dopaminergic system is constantly stimulated. It's never allowed to rest or transition to the here and now chemicals, but it is also never truly fulfilled. He's running a marathon on a digital treadmill. Constant movement, zero progress toward satisfaction.
And that is the brutal reality of the evolutionary mismatch, having every comfort but feeling constant biologically mandated emptiness.
It's truly humbling to realize that so much of modern unhappiness isn't a personal failing. It's a biological conflict with an environment our neurochemistry was never designed to handle. And we have to understand that this neurochemistry dictates not just our individual behavior, but our very approach to complex social and ethical decisions.
Absolutely. This brings us to a fascinating area where the split between dopamine, the future-maximizing chemical, and the here and now chemicals, the harm aversion chemicals, dictates our moral choices. The famous thought experiment, the trolley problem.
Remind us of the two classic scenarios.
In the first scenario, it's an abstract dilemma. A runaway trolley is heading toward 5 people. You're standing next to a switch. If you pull it, the trolley diverts to a sidetrack, killing only 1 person.
Okay.
When this problem is presented intellectually from a distance, about 90% of people say they would pull the switch. This is the utilitarian approach.
Which, in our terms, is the dopaminergic approach.
Precisely. Utilitarianism is inherently dopaminergic because its goal is maximizing future resources. In this case, 5 lives saved is objectively better than 1 life saved. It is a cold mathematical calculation of optimizing the outcome, and the dopamine circuits focused on future gain are highly active.
But then the scenario shifts. You're now standing on a bridge over the track next to a very large man. The only way to save the 5 is to physically push him onto the track, where his bulk will stop the trolley, killing him but saving the 5.
And in the scenario, where the problem is highly personal, immediate, and requires you to physically enact harm, the ethical calculation shifts entirely. Very few people are willing to push the man.
And that sudden resistance activates the here and now circuits.
Because pushing the man activates harm aversion, that immediate visceral feeling that it is fundamentally wrong to directly hurt another person, regardless of the future optimized outcome. The physical closeness changes the moral calculus instantly.
This distance versus closeness factor has massive, real-world ethical implications for modern technology. Like, consider the programming of self-driving cars. If a car is faced with an unavoidable accident, should it prioritize the utilitarian choice, minimizing overall loss of life?
Or should it be programmed to save the life of the driver and occupants, even if that means crashing into a crowded area?
Right. The human driver, operating on that here and now principle, will almost always instinctually swerve to save themselves, even if it means maximizing harm to others. But programming a machine requires cold, future-maximizing, dopaminergic logic. It's an incredibly difficult decision to legislate morality through code.
We see this in drone warfare as well. It becomes dramatically easier for a remote operator to enact a utilitarian kill decision, taking out a high-value target while knowing an innocent bystander will also die when they're physically removed from the consequences, viewing the target as an abstract pattern on a screen.
That physical distance makes the decision dopaminergic, utilitarian. Whereas if they were standing on the ground, the here and now circuits would activate immediate harm aversion.
And our neurochemistry is literally influencing how we legislate morality, particularly when technology removes us from the immediate visceral consequences of our choices. It doesn't even stop with ethics. We see this influence in political ideology, which is perhaps the most surprising finding from the sources.
It seems almost too simple to suggest that political affiliation could be influenced by a battle between 2 different sets of brain chemicals.
But the research is compelling. It comes down once again to the future versus the present. Political movements focused on progress, change, and making the world a better future place are highly influenced by dopaminergic drive. Progressives, for instance, are defined by their desire to push society toward more and away from the past.
Whereas ideologies focused on maintenance, stability, and protecting the good things we already have, conservatives are influenced by the here and now chemicals. They value tradition, existing social structures, and stability.
Researchers can actually look at specific genes related to dopamine reception and processing and find statistical correlations to political ideology. And what's more, external threats can temporarily or permanently shift this affiliation.
How does that shift happen?
It's the push and pull between provide and protect. When a population feels threatened, whether by economic collapse, terrorism, external conflict, it activates the protect circuits. Those here and now chemicals focused on safety and stability.
And this drives populations to the political right, valuing protection over progress.
Conversely, in times of relative security and economic possibility, the provide and progress circuits, the dopamine drive, are activated, pushing people to the left towards maximizing future societal gains. The brain is constantly deciding which chemical camp to obey, maintain the good we have, or pursue the better future we haven't acquired yet.
This all boils down to the ultimate question for us, for you listening. If we are subject to this intense, ancient neurochemical drive for more that never satisfies, what agency do we have? How do we gain conscious control?
We do have control, but we have to start by accepting the biological reality. The first strategy is really just the power of awareness, that ancient wisdom of know thyself. Understanding when the dopamine circuit is active, when you feel that relentless craving, that deep dissatisfaction with the present, that obsession with the future, that allows you to step back and ask, is this pursuit productive, or is it merely biological noise?
That ability to step back and witness our own impulses without immediately acting on them is often called the observing ego. It's recognizing that the craving is a chemical signal, not necessarily an accurate reflection of reality.
And critically, we have to stop relying on willpower. If you are always living on the dopamine accelerator, constantly relying on sheer mental force to change your direction, you're doomed to fail. Willpower is a deeply depletable resource.
That depletion was demonstrated so clearly in the famous radish and cookie study. Participants who were forced to use enormous willpower to resist eating tempting chocolate chip cookies were subsequently less able to persevere later when presented with an insolvable math problem.
Their willpower was chemically drained by the cookies.
Wow.
The lesson is profound. The primary strategy should be setting up systems that make success easy, rather than constantly fighting impulse. Instead of relying on willpower to avoid scrolling your phone, remove the phone from the bedroom. Instead of fighting the urge to eat junk food, remove it from the house. By setting up the system for success, you can serve that precious, depletable willpower resource for the moments when you truly need it.
The second strategy involves intentionally strengthening the pathways we want to be stronger. We have to intentionally cultivate satisfaction. We have to work to strengthen that stop and savor muscle, the here and now circuit.
This requires structured intention. It means prioritizing dinner without a phone, turning off digital notifications for specific blocks of time, or using objective self-talk, literally verbalizing why you appreciate what you have. We tend to believe what we say, not just what we hear. Talking yourself through gratitude or the simple pleasures of a moment strengthens those here and now pathways, training your brain to rely less on the anticipation of the next big hit.
And as a final technical note on a common misconception, can we safely manipulate the volume of dopamine?
For non-medical reasons, absolutely not. You can't safely increase or decrease the volume of dopamine itself. Addictive drugs like cocaine or methamphetamine only increase the activity of the dopamine you already have by interfering with its reuptake, amplifying its signal, which is precisely why they lead to ruin and addiction. The goal is management and balance, not chemical manipulation.
So the ultimate control we have isn't in manipulating the chemical itself, it's in managing the pursuit.
That's the key takeaway. You gain power when you understand this physiological reality. That desire is always about the future and satisfaction is always about the present. You gain the observing capacity to recognize the craving, step back, and decide what to do with that pursuit. You can choose to step off the dopaminergic treadmill and find contentment right where you are.
We've seen how this one ancient molecule, designed for a world of scarcity, is constantly battling the reality of a modern world built for surplus, and it makes a promise it simply cannot keep.
The greatest challenge of the modern age might just be accepting that the future we chase is only as rewarding as our capacity to appreciate the here and now. The promise of more can never be truly kept. It is entirely up to you to define what enough feels like.